My name is Alan. On behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. You know, when I was driving over here tonight, I was just talking to a friend, and we were talking about, how many shows we've done and how many guests have been on and all that. And I was saying that tonight we have a guest on. He's a healer and a spiritual teacher. His name is Gary Douglas Smith, and he's from the LA area, and he's had, extraordinary physical results from his healings, and his healing power has been scientifically tested for its effect and its power. And I was saying that of all the different guests, we've probably had over 200 guests on Bridging Heaven and Earth up until this show. And the shows that we get the most calls on and the guests that we get the most calls on are usually healers. And healers of the physical body. And God knows that when we're not feeling physically well, that it's so difficult for us to proceed in this life. But somehow I was thinking, we started talking about that, so much of it is we try to heal the physical form. But when are we going to heal the heart? When are we going to heal the hurt? When are we going to heal the hope? When are we going to heal that love in us? And I know that Gary tries to transcend that. He tries to work with the physical body into that healing the connection between us all, healing that remembrance in us all of that truth, the truth that we're all connected. And then in that, the physical form, in a way, heals itself. And we all want to know that healing of the heart, that healing of the love. We need to have that experience. And so often in our lives, we worry about the physical body. I mean, in this area, we shoot out of Santa Barbara, California. I mean, God knows in LA, there are implants for this and facelifts for this. So much to keep the physical appearance in a certain way. But when are we going to heal the heart? Heal that longing to know the truth. And it's just time for that. It's time for us to really know our true connection, for us to really know our true love. And Gary is with us tonight to share his experience and his gifts, and to line us up in a way to do that once again, to help us experience that truth. And then we were supposed to have this extraordinary singer with us, Ellen Edwards. She was coming all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, and then she had some family problems and money problems and problems with her kids being sick, and she couldn't come out. But she had just done a television show in the Atlanta area where they had done 3 beautiful songs of hers. And I said if the video was good, I mean, we've never done this before. We every show have a live performer of some kind. But her videos were so beautiful, and she asked me so much to please have her videos on. So we're doing that tonight. So we're showing 3 videos of Ellen Edwards. They're from her beautiful new CD, which is called Through the Fields of Home, which is the first song you're going to hear. So tonight, again, we're delighted to have you with us. We're delighted that you've joined with us again to heal the heart. I mean, because that's what this show is about. The show is about sending out that vibration of love. So whatever our differences we think there might be, that they can fade into that one love, that one truth, that one heart. So please, as we normally do at this time, join me in a short meditation. Then we'll start with an Ellen video, and then Gary's going to be on the set talking about his gifts. So please join me. Thank you very much. So I did want to remind you that, or tell you that I know we've spoken about the Bridging Heaven and Earth Foundation before, but we've gotten 2 people who've agreed to be on the board of advisors of the Bridging Heaven and Earth Foundation, in addition to the other 20, 25 people. It's just an extraordinarily powerful and loving board. We've had Lynette Damaris, who was just a guest recently, who wrote The Spiritual Life of Horses, who's been doing a tremendous amount to help the show get on in numerous places. In just the last week, we've gotten on in Fairfield, Iowa, in St. Paul, Minnesota, and in New Orleans. So, I mean, and she's trying to get us on in about 8 or 10 more very large cities. So we just really appreciate what she's been doing. And also Tom Hartman, who was the guest on the last show, who's an extraordinarily gifted and loving teacher and healer too. So we're really fortunate with that, and we're just thankful that we're getting on in all these cities. So we're going to start tonight's show with an Ellen Edwards video, Through the Fields of Home, and this is from her CD from the same name, written and performed by Ellen.
There's a field of golden majesty and light, a meadow soft and warm. It's where I rest my soul, where my spirit rides the wind in the golden fields of home. And the path I walk that always leads me there reminds me to be still, to hear the call from the meadow, from the light to the golden fields of home. I'm on my way, I'll be back in your arms again, 'cause I'm returning to you, my friend, through the fields of home. I'm on my way. I remember I promised you to return to the love we knew, through the fields of home. I'm on my way, and I'll be back in your arms again, 'cause I'm returning to you, my friend, through the fields of home. I'm on my way. I remember I promised you to return to the love we knew, through the fields of home. And we meet again in the majesty and light, in a meadow soft and warm. It's where my soul can sing, and where my spirit rides the wind in the golden fields of home. 'Cause I'm on my way, I'll be back in your arms again, 'cause I'm returning to you, my friends, through the fields of home.
Hi, well, we're on the set with Gary. Thank you, Ellen in Atlanta. So welcome, Gary.
Thank you.
So when did you, well, how would you describe what a healer is?
The idea of healer, or the term healer, is really sort of odd to me, because I think that implies that I'm trying to fix somebody, or that in a sense that there's something wrong with someone. Quite simply, all I really am doing is feeling unconditional love for the person. And it's sort of through that unconditional love that the person has, for some sort of reason, this physical experience. So I'm not necessarily A, trying to fix a person, or B, I'm not looking at the person as being incomplete. I really am sort of experiencing the person as a whole person. I'm not working with chakras, I'm not working with auras, I'm not doing anything that I guess sort of the traditional healers are doing. It's really sort of, again, as simple as just loving the person.
And how did this begin for you? I mean, were you just in the supermarket one day, or
about as close to that as can be. Yeah, I had never thought about really pursuing anything like this. I'd always sort of traveled a pretty normal path as far as career, and I was in advertising and doing relatively well in that, except I was starting to physically get really tired and getting headaches and stomach pains. And one day I just had this real sort of clear moment where if I didn't quit this job, I was going to die. So I sort of quit the job.
You were going to quit something.
Yeah. So I quit the job. I had no clue what I was going to do, but I sort of at that time decided, A, I want to find out if people have purposes, and B, if we do, what is mine and how do I go find that?
Did you have a spiritual background before that?
Yeah, I would say I had a spiritual background. Probably about maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I started to sort of go from being a hardcore little Republican, kid, to all of a sudden having these like spiritual ideas and sort of going through my own sort of spiritual crisis. So I had a background in which I felt very connected with God and who I wanted to be. But sort of push that aside to try to pay my bills and figure out how to sort of fit within the culture and buy a nice house and car and all those things. So I did have sort of the background. However, the idea of being a healer or going into anything like that was...
It was not a Republican family idea for you.
No, actually it was funny.
My son, the healer, would be great.
No, my parents actually were Democrats. So
really?
I'm not sure where I came from.
Really?
I think like at some point I decided that to be successful and rich in the world, which is what I decided when I was 18 I wanted to be, one had to sort of be a Republican. So it's sort of funny like how I've gone through all these different changes.
So your parents were actually happy that you went from a Republican to a healer.
Exactly.
Most people, when you end up as a healer, it's like,
opposite
holy
way.
Christ,
yeah, what the hell's going on?
But a Republicans might be worse.
Yeah, exactly. So literally just sort of one day through going through that, I sort of, again, had another clear moment where I thought, okay, I definitely have a purpose and I'm going to go find that. And during that period, I was just sort of sitting on my couch doing nothing in particular. And I just sort of had this moment where, best I would describe it is my mind just got really clear. And I heard these 4 messages. And I sort of thought, what was that? And this sort of repeated over and over again until I kind of got up and wrote it all down. And once that happened, it just sort of stopped. And I was sort of like, what was what? And the feeling experience I had was that it was the voice of God. And basically one of the messages was, you've been given the gift of healing. And when this all sort of happened, it was kind of like, what the heck was that? Why me? What's going on? I have no desire to be a healer. What is that all about? And really sort of within like the 5 months after that happened, I had some pretty open-minded friends. I said, well, here, close your eyes. Let me just put my hands on you or over you and tell me what you experience. And nobody was experiencing anything. So I was really annoyed, to say the least, because, okay, God spoke to me, I can heal people, but no one's feeling anything.
Did you go to number 2 on the list after 1 wasn't working so good?
No, I knew there was something going on,
right.
And I was just trying to be patient with it. And I thought the more I tried this, somebody at some point was going to feel something. I was reading books, and I was told I was going to, feel things in my hands, and that wasn't happening. So I was really getting frustrated. And a friend of mine gave me a book, and I went to the website and found out that this author had some meetings scheduled early coming up. So I called up and got a response from his secretary, who was really sweet, and we were just sort of chatting. And she said, "What do you do?" And out of my mouth came, "I'm a healer." And as I literally said it, I thought, who said that? Why would I say that to her? So she proceeds to tell me, "Oh, wow, interesting. The author has some things going on with him." So why don't you give him my phone number, call me up, and we'll do some work. A couple of days later, the secretary actually buzzes me and says, "This person is on the phone," and I'm panicking. I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm not a healer. Here's this like famous author who's calling me because he thinks I'm a healer." So I came clean with him and said, "Look, here's the deal. I had this experience," and he said, "Well, you want to try it on the telephone?" I said, "Sure." So he closed his eyes. I kind of did my thing. And what was interesting is I sort of felt some stuff, but again, nothing where I go, wow, this is real. But what was kind of cool is he had an interesting experience, but I got these messages. And they were really accurate as to some things that were going on with his relatives and his father prior to. And he was like, wow, that's really interesting. So I thought, that's pretty interesting. I'm getting these messages for other people now. Maybe something's going on. So we did a couple of them. Had some pretty great experiences, but nothing like where I said, wow, I'm a healer, this is for real. But I did think this is pretty interesting. I'm getting these messages. So about a week and a half goes by, and I get this weird sort of cryptic message from his secretary saying, Gary, can you call me? And hi. I'm like, that was really sort of odd. So I called her back thinking the author told her he had good experience. I'm a healer. She wants a healing. And she proceeds to tell me what had happened the same day that we had the phone call. And literally what she said is that she hung up the phone and her hands, where she had arthritis through her hands, all the way her wrists, all the way up her arms, to the point where couldn't open up milk, couldn't open up the refrigerator, couldn't really do anything with her hands, couldn't even hold a telephone. She was actually talking to me with a speaker wire, disappeared. And at that moment, two things flashed in my head. The first was, oh my God, this is real. And the second one was, oh no, now what do I do? Because sort of during that 5 months, it was pretty cool. I didn't have to do anything about it. I didn't have to tell anybody. Guess what? God talked to me. Guess what? I'm a healer. Come over and I'll do some work on you. It was really sort of safe. And I sort of remember in that moment going, here we go. Not knowing exactly what was going to happen, but that was sort of the moment for me that confirmed somebody actually had an experience. And the interesting thing with that, again, is I didn't try to do anything. And what I've learned from this experience is that, again, it really comes down to love. I've had so many people where I've had a conversation with them, and I've really felt like we just had a good connection. I wasn't trying to do anything, wasn't trying to heal them, wasn't trying to focus love on them, doing nothing. Have had these really wonderful experiences. So it's funny sometimes when I sit on the phone for an hour with somebody and really sort of get into this place and pray and try to feel love with them. And sometimes it's just as simple as having a 2-minute conversation. The person has a really wonderful experience. So again, it all comes down to love.
Wow. And are you going to share the other 3 with us, or is that?
The first one, I'm not sure I'm supposed to. It was sort of like, just feel like, okay, it's for me, I suppose. The second one was, again, you've been given the gift of healing. The third one is you will lead people away from suffering. And the fourth one was there's nothing to fear, which is the trickiest one of all for me. Because I get through these moments where things just really flow in a good way, and I go, okay, this all makes sense now. There's nothing to worry about. And then some way I get in the way of that, and all of a sudden here comes all the fear. So for me, I think that's like the perfect message for me, because that's my biggest challenge, I think, is dealing through the fear.
And so do you find, I mean, I know you've had incredible experiences with this. When I was reading some of your literature, and that somebody had tumors in the lungs, and he was going to go in for an operation like the next day and get, both lungs through with some horror.
That was the most amazing experience for me, because it blows me away. I'm in like complete awe, because I actually heard him. He was interviewed for another radio program, and when I listened to it, it just like gave me the chills. And it's weird because I really understand my place in the game. How really little a role it is as far as being able to heal somebody. I get that I can't do that. That sort of bends the laws of the universe, and I understand that that's not me. But what was really interesting about his case is I just sort of found him on a sort of, what do you call it? Sort of like a chat room. He just left this weird message basically saying, I have cancer, I'm dying, someone help me. And I contacted him. And we did sort of one healing, and I said, did you feel anything? Well, not really, but he said, my mouth is wet. And I said, well, good for you. And I'm like, what does that mean? And what he was saying is that, to back up a little bit, he had a couple tumors in the back of his neck, and when they removed him through all the chemotherapy and radiation, he has no saliva glands in his mouth. So we both thought, wow, that's pretty weird. For 6 months, he has to drink water literally every like 2 seconds, or his mouth will dry up. So I thought, that's kind of neat. And over like the next 2 weeks, we just never seemed to be able to connect. So we finally connected the day before he was going in to have surgery. And that day he had come from the hospital. I think it's the Cleveland General Hospital. Anyway, it's like the real big hospital there.
So you were never in his physical presence?
Never met him. He could be right here. I wouldn't even know it was him. Never seen him. I would recognize the voice, obviously. So we went ahead and we did the healing. And again, did you feel anything? Well, no, I just felt really calm and all that. And the interesting thing is the message I got for him, the very last line was something to the effect of, there's a good chance that when you wake up in the morning, the tumors will be gone. And I sort of joked with him, and I said, that would sort of suck if they cut you open and found nothing in there. I got an email.
That was
the last message. Yeah,
like,
there's a good chance that when you wake up in the morning, the tumors will be gone. So we sort of joked about that. You know, he said, I'll call you in 8 days when I get out. The next night before I went to sleep, I got an email from his wife, and it just completely shocked me, blew me away. What happened is they cut him open, and all they found were sacks full of water. And the great part is that, for me, the great part was, which is really validating, is that the doctor said, there's no way we misdiagnosed you. They had run CT scans, they did probably 5 or 6 different tests, which all showed that these were cancerous tumors, and they really had like no explanation for it. The bummer was that he didn't tell me he'd worked with a healer, which is really kind of tough for what I do, because we can sort of segue into the research that I did have done, is that a lot of people, unfortunately, are afraid to tell their doctors that they've had this positive experience because they think they're going to look weird or they're going to be sort of freaky. And the bummer part is that that sort of loses an opportunity to, A, let people know that this is happening. People are having these experiences through sort of more of a spiritual means than the physical means. And B, I think it takes away from the opportunity to do some research and to have doctors get an opportunity to know this is going on.
But you actually had some research done with a Harvard-trained doctor.
Right. Dr. C. Norman Shealy. Yeah, I was flown out to his...
how did he and you hook up?
I knew about his
Another
work.
chat room, and I'm going to start...
No. Actually, I knew about his work with Carolyn Mace. I don't know if you're familiar with her. And I went to his website. It was as simple as I just sent him my story. I sort of typed it up. It's on my website. I just sort of typed up the story that God talked to me. Here's this experience, and sent it off to him. Never in a million years thinking he would respond. He sent me this cute little message saying, oh, that's pretty cool, and maybe we can do some research. And a couple weeks later, I get another message from him saying, PAX TV is going to be doing a special on healing and research and science. How would you like to fly out here? We'll research you. If you're able to do this, you'll be part of this program. So literally, I flew out to Springfield, Missouri. I just got confused for a second. I thought I was in Illinois. There's so many Springfield, Missouri, actually.
Massachusetts, another one there.
Yeah, there's probably 100 of them. Anyway, so they flew me out there, and it was really cool. What they do is they use this technology called electroencephalogram, or EEG, and what it basically does is it measures the person's brain waves. Right. So it was really funny. They basically just put a weird cap on the person with this beanie with all these wires hanging out of it, put masks over their face. They're completely covered. All I see is a nose and a mouth. And the good part is that the patient has no clue what's going to happen. Basically, all they're told is, we're going to do this experiment, we're just going to measure your brain waves, nothing's going to happen, you're safe. So they couldn't hear, couldn't see, didn't know what's going on.
And they didn't know when they
didn't know I was even going to be there.
Right, or when you were going to be there or anything.
Right. No, they didn't know that a healer was going to be doing anything. They were just told that their brain waves were going to be measured, and thanks, go home. So what happens is, what they did is they measured the person's brain waves for about 10 minutes, just want to see what happens to that. I come into the room, again, they don't know I'm doing it. What was really weird for me, this was really early on, I was told you can't touch them. I'm like, well, what do I do then? You know, so I'm just sort of sitting there doing this, making sure I don't like knock into the table, sort of freaking out, and while this machine is doing all these things, all the while going, can I really do this? For me, it was really cool because I doubt even myself. So for me, it was wonderful to have an opportunity to have some sort of scientific validation just for me to know, like, is this really real? Because the one person had had that great experience, but can I really like affect a person's brain physiology? Is this for real? Anyway, I come into the room for 25 minutes. I do my thing. What it's doing is measuring the brain waves, see if there's any sort of change. I leave, and again, it measures it for another 10 minutes to see what happens after I leave.
And was there one person, one test subject, or were like 20 or 5?
No, we did, the first day we did 3 people. Second day.
All one
day. Yeah.
One-on-one though.
Yeah, just me.
Right.
Yeah, the only
no, I mean one, you and the one person
that I'm working on.
3 lined up or 10 lined up.
No,
I'd be curious, you know, as another experiment.
No, I was actually hoping
everybody had the same.
Right. No, I was actually hoping that I would be able to do one if it's possible, where I'm just on the telephone in LA, the way I do it, hook somebody up to a machine wherever, Springfield or who cares, and see if the machine's actually able to register it.
That's never been done.
I don't know.
As of this point, that you know.
No, not that I know of.
Right.
So that happened the first day, and then the second day they had me work with one other person while PAX TV sort of filmed it. And the other interesting thing, they said, well, gee, why don't we hook up you to the machine and see what happens to your brain waves, which I was not like really all that excited about because they're 2 hours ahead of me. I had gotten in the night before at, I think, like 10 p.m. my time, which is midnight. So anyway, I had like 4 hours of sleep, and I said to the director, I said, look, this is just not going to be smart. I'm going to pass out. There's no doubt about it. No, don't worry, you know. So I'm like, okay, fine. So of course they hooked me up to this whole elaborate thing, And it was really kind of funny because all I remember is we're going to tap you and we want you to think about healing. Because now I can't even move my hands. And I'm like, what am I going to do now? So I feel this tap. Next thing I know, I feel 2 taps. I don't remember what happened. I thought I fell asleep. Director's like yelling at me, not yelling, but not real happy with me. He's like, you fell asleep, you were snoring. I'm like, I told you that was going to happen. So they go off, they interview Dr. Shealy about what we had done earlier, and they come back to check the results. And the funny thing is my brainwaves actually went the complete opposite way of somebody who was sleeping. So I don't quote me on this, but I think that the beta waves actually, while you're sleeping, go down, mine went up. So I have no clue what happened. Everyone thought I fell asleep. I still think I fell asleep, but it was really bizarre. The thing measured it as sort of the opposite. There was some sort of weird healing thing going on even while I thought
and
sleeping.
What was the effect of the brainwaves on the test subjects?
One person was really kind of funny because they said, here's what happened, we had a healer, and she was sort of like weird about it, working on you, and what happened. She had like all these things going on with her, and she's like, I didn't feel anything, I feel horrible. And he's like, well, is there anything? She's like, well, yeah, my knee doesn't hurt anymore. So, well, how long has that been going on? She's like, well, a couple of years. He's like, that would be something. So it was really kind of funny, So she had a good experience. I worked on a woman who I think was in her 70s, and like that day, it was funny. There was another one.
She skipped out of the room.
No, well, she was the first person because it was weird. 2 of the 3 people who were supposed to show up didn't show up for the research. So I'm like, okay, this is terrible. So they just picked this like elderly woman who said, well, if I lay down, it hurts. And the problem was she had a bad back. So I'm sitting here going, I'm going to look horrible. There's no way, So of course when she gets up, she's like, well, my back hurts. I'm like, hello, you're under for an hour. So it was funny. I saw her the next day at the clinic, and she's like, yeah, it was really interesting. I was able to get out of my bed without like pushing. I'm like, well, tell Norm that, Everyone always tells me these things, but they never tell, so that was pretty funny. But for the most part, what was interesting to me was seeing how people's brainwaves change. And what's cool is I put on my website, I posted the research, and what's neat is they do these things called brain maps. This is various like colors of the person's brain. You can actually see like how the colors change.
So just in the time you were in there, that from the 10 minutes and the 25 minutes in the middle when you were there was a significant difference as opposed to both sides.
Yeah, I don't know how to exactly articulate. I think Norm says if you can move somebody's brainwaves between like 15 to 20%, that's significant. Because the average person's brainwaves don't change within like plus or minus like 2% during like an hour's like rest. So that was sort of the game. And what was sort of neat with one of the people is when I left the room, instead of her brainwaves returning to normal, which happened with 3 of the 4 people, her brainwaves actually stayed sort of in this healing state. So I don't know what that's about, but Norm said that that's a pretty rare experience.
Maybe we'll have the second video, and then we'll come back and try to talk about what the different brainwaves would mean, why it would be one would be a healing and one not. Okay, so we're going to go to Ellen's second video. She's going to do 2 songs on this one. The Living in a Garden is going to be the first song, and then Where My Heart's Never Been is going to be on the second song. And all these songs have been written, and they're going to be performed by Ellen Edwards from her CD Through the Fields of Home. So, Ellen?
Secrets linger like a friend. find someone to care. But in the dark and rage of the storms, when I looked for their arms, it seemed no one was there. So I kept loving its place. This fortress that I built has felt safe, but now your love's become my protector. I found a new shelter in your tender embrace. Well, I've never felt so loved. I'm where my heart's never been. You keep me safe through the storms, in the love of your arms, where my heart's never been. I've never felt so safe in your arms, where my heart's never been. I've never felt so in a new world, safe in your arms, where my heart's never been. I've never felt so in a new world, safe in your arms, where my heart's never been. You kiss me with your and show me what it means to love. Your tenderness gives me the strength to live in a place where my heart's never been. I've never felt so loved, safe in your arms. I'm where my heart's never been. You keep me safe through the storms, in the love of your arms, where my heart's never been. I've never felt so loved, safe in your arms, where my heart's never been. You keep me safe through the storms, in the love of your arms, where my heart's never been. I've never felt so loved, safe in your arms, where my heart's never been. I've never felt so loved, safe in your arms, where my heart's never been. I've never felt so loved, safe in your arms, where my heart's never been. I've never felt so loved, where my heart's never been. I've never felt so.
Yeah, hi, we're back on the set with Gary. So, in all your experience of what I talked about at the opening, the healing, and you talk about basically just being open to unconditional love and just basically sharing that. I mean, how do you describe unconditional love? What does that mean to you?
I think the best way to describe unconditional love is feeling connected, whether that's feeling connected to another person, feeling connected to an animal, to the earth, whatever that is. What's really unique and interesting about what I get to do is I get to have sort of the physical experience of that. And the best way I would describe it is, again, connected, but in this area, sort of my heart area, it's this profound peace and sort of opening. And that's what I would call unconditional love. And I would like at some point to be able to figure out how to sort of teach people to do that, because I believe that that's something we can do. In a sense, it's sort of two parts. One is that it's an indicator that you are connected. You know, it's like, you know, if you feel it in there, you know that you're connected. And the second part, too, is I think it helps people to connect with who they are. And I think what's going on really, what's really sad right now is a lot of people don't even feel connected with their own self, let alone with other people and with sort of their environment. And I think another misconception about love is that people hear the word love and they think of romantic love. And it's really not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is sort of the unconditional love of God, the unconditional love of a parent who loves you, the unconditional love. Easiest way to describe it, everyone can always relate to this, is the feeling you get when you look at like your cat or your dog. You just feel this real amazing sort of connection. It's a love that doesn't have any sort of condition to it. And again, for me, what's interesting is that like I can have sort of that physical feeling.
And do you find that when you do these healings on people that like heart opening happens?
Yeah, it's needed. I can literally just think about it. And two things will happen if I just sort of think about healing or just think about the idea of it. I start to get all sorts of interesting feelings in my palms, usually, just anywhere through my hands. And literally it's like a huge expansion goes on in here, and I just feel really peaceful. And
how about the people who are coming to you and open to you in that way? Does that carry forth? I mean, like someone whose arthritis goes away, is there some, I mean, it's something would happen, just the fact that it happened, and they've expanded what's possible. But do you hear about people having experiences that like kind of opens their heart in that way?
Yeah, I get such a vast array of experiences from people. From the coolest stuff are people who will have these sort of spiritual experiences. I have a couple of them on my website where people have just said, I've experienced angels, or I've experienced Mary or Jesus. And these are people who are not like highly religious, people who are not really sort of quote unquote spiritual people. It's like a huge eye-opening to people. Neat experiences where people will just like pick up a pen during the session and write down these like just amazing notes. I've had people have obviously like physical experiences. Had a few people, I don't know the best way to describe it, they would say the same sort of thing, that what they're feeling is a real connection to themselves, and some people will say, I kind of wish that would stay with me. And I think that's something that eventually we'll be able to teach people how to do, but they'll just say that they literally just feel really at peace with themselves for like a prolonged period of time. Some people's experiences are really neat. Some people will really just sort of feel energy, feel a lot of pulsations in their body. Usually it's wherever it is that's going on with them. What's really neat is someone was telling me that usually energy goes down or up. I forget how it was, and she sort of felt to go the opposite way, which for her was kind of cool because it was a confirmation something weird was going on, something different was happening with her body. I think it's very rare is that if you actually came to me with physical pain, that it actually like goes away while we're actually on the phone. I don't know why that is. There's always sort of like this 3 to 5 day window period. I usually tell people if you haven't felt anything by the 5th day, it's just probably not going to happen. I have a couple theories on why that is. I think part of it is that whatever's going on stays with you for a period of time, and probably while you're resting and sleeping and all that it's sort of continuing on. So I've always thought that was sort of weird, like why isn't sort of real present moment? Their experience is present moment as far as like having some sort of a sensation where they like see colors or hear voices, or will have some really neat sort of physical experience, but the actual quote unquote healing part doesn't usually happen simultaneously. I'm not sure why that is.
You don't have a theory about why there's a time lag in that?
No, I really don't. I think what happens is, and you sort of hit on in the beginning, I really think, in a sense, all I'm doing is I'm opening myself up to what I believe is God to literally use me to love the person. And again, I'm not healing anyone. I don't even think God's healing anyone. I think what's happening is the person's awakening to their own self-love within themselves. It's probably the best way to describe it, and the healing's happening with them. So I think that part is maybe a process for them.
You mean that disharmony or disease is becoming harmonious or at ease?
Yeah,
and that takes a time in the physical world to, maybe that's an explanation for it.
Possibly the best thing. Maybe what's going on is that within the person, they're starting to very slowly accept. Here's another interesting way to maybe look at it. Usually if somebody has something really chronic going on or something really serious like cancer, I would always say, let's try and do like 2 or 3 sessions. What I find with the people who will do multiple sessions is sort of within each experience that they're able to have a deeper experience. So I think this is what I think might be going on, is that the first time their body, their spirit, whoever's in charge of this whole game says, ooh, what is this? I don't know what this is. And maybe is only able to accept a certain experience of that. Because the second time the person will always say, wow, it was like a lot deeper experience. Third time, I have one person, which is really just, to me, a really funny story. It's on my website too, and he was having panic attacks. And we did the first one. I said, do you feel anything? No. Any experience? No. Call me back. You want to do it again? I said, okay. Same thing. Didn't feel anything for 3 times. He goes, why does this guy keep calling me back? He's not feeling anything. He's not getting any results. So the 4th time, all of a sudden, he's like, oh my God, he had this just really amazing experience. And he sort of like sent me an email like 2 or 3 months later and said, you know, I just realized like I haven't had a panic attack in 3 months, and I've been in elevators, and I've been in all these situations that always sort of start the panic attack. So he's really sort of a good example of somebody who, I think what happens is it kind of goes deeper and deeper and deeper, whatever that love is, however it functions in the physical body or the spirit. I'm not sure what's going on. But I think that might be part of it. So maybe we do a session and you feel something or don't feel something, and maybe by the 3rd or 4th day, it's built up. I don't know. That's sort of the best thing I would say. You gain some sort of momentum, or the physical body or the spirit is sort of going, what is this, and sort of taking it all in, and or maybe what's happening is those centers inside them are opening up, and it just takes a period of time for that to actually happen. Very rarely, but I do hear once in a while people will sort of send me an email a couple months later and say it just disappeared. So it does take time, but on the most part, it's usually that sort of 3 to 5 day period if it's going to really happen.
And would you say, I mean, you know, it's a stupid thing, but you use in words sometimes. I mean, what percentage of people are healed of their physical disease?
Yeah. I'll give you a good example of why that's so hard and so difficult to do. One thing is...
You mean to give a percentage?
Some sort of, I'll tell you why. This is a perfect example. For this show, I like to send out emails to people and say, hey, I'm going to be on this show. If you want to watch it, here it is. And it was funny. I got 2 emails back, one from a woman I hadn't heard from probably in like 6 months, who said, gee, I just want to let you know that the digestive problems I had sort of went away, and I can go out and eat in restaurants. And I got another email from a woman who I hadn't heard from for about 8 weeks, and I just figured she didn't have a good experience, because I always keep in touch with people, and some people don't return my emails or phone calls, and I figure, okay, they're not happy.
Right.
Same thing, she sent me an email, you're not going to believe it, my chest pains I've had for 7 years, they're just gone. So here's a good example. If I would have quantified that, I would have put those in the didn't have a healing experience. So that happens a lot with me sometimes, is that I won't hear from people, then I hear back from them, and sort of like that all of a sudden skews to in the healing experience rather than not experience. Other thing that's really sort of difficult to quantify is, how do you quantify a change in a person's emotional experiences and their spiritual experiences? I will have people who may have like MS. The woman who I worked with who had MS still has MS. But she picked up a pen during the session and wrote down like 4 or 5 pages of just like this unbelievable thing. I don't know what it was from her spirit guide, from God, I don't know. Absolutely beautiful message. It totally made her feel at peace with what's going on with her, and she's just a totally happy human being. So medically, we would say, well, that's not healing. But for her, that would be healing. So it's sort of tough between not being able to get an accurate count from people who have had experiences or haven't. And again, the sort of how do you quantify the spiritual and emotional experience where people feel better with themselves and may not have had the physical experience, but they're actually happy now. Because I got an email from a woman who I hadn't talked to 4 or 5 months, who said her husband's like happy for the first time this month. For like 4 months, he's just been like totally happy. Just like miserable. He's been miserable up until that point. Still has the physical stuff. So he'd say, well, okay, that's a bad experience. He didn't have a good experience, but he's really happy with who he is and what's happening in his life now. So sort of the combination of that makes it really hard to kind of put it into this sort of pie. The other part, again, which is really weird for me, is learning how to trust that the people are coming to me for a reason, and it's not always going to be to have a physical experience. I do this in the hopes that everyone who comes to me gets, for my own selfish reasons, to have a physical experience, but I'm beginning to really understand that that may not be why they're coming to me.
So there's a certain level of surrender you're having to learn and having to go through. Yeah,
it's been a really interesting process on my own end, because part of it's ego involvement, whereas like if I'm going to continue to do this, then people better have healings or I'm not going to do this, you know. It's sort of like my mentality. If I pick up a bowling ball and don't, get 150 the first time, it's like, screw this, I'm not good at it. Let's go do something else I'm better at. So the part of that is the ego involvement on my end. And I still am not really good at being able to say, well, sorry you didn't have an experience, good luck. I really get connected to the person, and it's really, for me, still very depressing if the person still has the cancer or is still going through the pain, because I feel in a really neat way that I get to connect with somebody in a way that you verbally can't even experience it. I mean, we may never have a really great conversation, but through doing the work I do, I, in a sense, get to like really experience a person in a real deep way. So it's really hard for me, even though I know it may not be in their best interest to have this physical healing. It's still really hard for me to just get that and let that kind of go.
Yeah, let it go.
Yeah, and that's still part of my own process of going through that and being able to say, okay, it's not really up to me whether the person has a healing. I just do what I do and sort of pray that they get whatever it is they're supposed to get from the experience. On my end, obviously, I always sort of pray that the people who are finding me because I can help them. And for me, it's learning how to not define what help is. You know, learning how to just sort of back off that and trust that maybe in the message I get for them, that's helping them. Maybe in some way that they or I don't even understand, they're having some sort of really interesting experience that is helping them. Something that's really interesting in what I do too, and it started to happen early on, particularly with a couple of children who their parents came to me when they were just really sort of in really bad shape. One had had cancer for 5 years and had brain surgery a bunch of times and was obviously going to pass on. And what was interesting when I did the healing, it's like I just had the most profound sadness I've ever felt, and I just was crying, and I couldn't stop it. It freaked me out in a huge way. I was like stomping on the ground, and literally in the same way where the healing usually just stops, same thing, it just stopped, and just boom, I was just like right back to normal. And it was like some weird thing. I don't know if it was like sort of tapping into the own person's soul who was like having a hard time letting go and moving on, but I think that's part of what I do as well, and I try to convey that in the best way I can to people when people come to me in that state where it's pretty unlikely that something's going to change, that maybe that's what's happening, that I'm helping them to sort of let go. Because I would get messages with one kid, and it was really sad that his parents didn't want to let him go, and he was just sort of holding on, and I couldn't communicate this to like a 5-year-old boy because how, you know, is he going to get what I'm trying to say to him? And it's pretty hard to say to a parent, this is what's really happening. So that's been sort of an interesting and difficult thing for me to learn, is like, how do you explain to people that death is not a bad thing, and that might be what's happening, is we're just sort of allowing the child to let go and move along. Another thing that I've learned from doing this is that my understanding is that we come into this earth with certain conditions and experiences that we choose to have in this lifetime. And if you came here to experience AIDS, or you came here to experience cancer, no matter how much love I give you is not going to change that, because that is the destiny and path you came here to experience. So it's difficult because a lot of people have this perception that people are getting ill because they're bad people, or God is punishing them, or they've sinned, and all this other, I'll use nice language, junk. And I found that to just not be the truth. God does not punish. That's not what's going on here. And a lot of times, obviously, it's pretty difficult to say that a 5-year-old kid has somehow sinned, and that's why he has cancer and he's going to die. What I find is that everybody's illness or whatever's going on with the person, they are connected with everybody, whether it be their family, friends. Sometimes it's someone like Magic Johnson who affects an entire nation, where people see, here's somebody we know who has AIDS, and we're all really connected. And sometimes, particularly with children, they seem to come in here to basically do that, to teach people love. I've gotten messages from people who were the type of people who were always giving and never learned how to accept love from people. And this experience is allowing them to sort of let go and let people love them. And we've heard a million times from people who said that sometimes cancer was the greatest gift to me, because it helped me to understand who I am, what's important, and why I'm here. So it's kind of difficult to sort of convey that to people, because we have this idea that illness is always a bad thing. And it's not always a bad thing. Obviously, suffering is not fun.
Can you tell the difference intuitively when you start?
No. One thing that is changing is that I seem to be getting, I don't know how to use this word, clairaudient. I seem to be getting better messages now, clearer. I didn't have very much confidence in it. It's only in the last few months that I felt comfortable for asking, why is this person going through this? You know, what's happening here? Is it willing to go on? I got a really interesting message lately about somebody who has herpes. And again, it just said, this is the condition that you came in here, and here's what you came here to learn. For him, it was really interesting. He's like, wow, that is true. I have had these sort of inner experiences based on having this experience of herpes. But what was interesting, and I've had this a couple times now, is that in that case, it said, you have the ability, the option to let this go now. So that's pretty interesting. I do find that we have a lot of power in what we actually create within our own lives. And I find that sometimes we actually come in here, I'll give my own example. I sort of feel like in my own personal experience that I've come in here with sort of this understanding that my learning must come through suffering and through hardship and really hard work. And I realize that, like, I really can just in that moment say, no, it's just not how I want to do this. I'd rather do this through joy.
Joy and love and grace.
So yeah, so sometimes I find that with people who are having experiences that really they can have the option of changing this experience.
And when you have this heart opening experience in other people, are there any like tools you feel like you're associated with, like to allow that person to take that and make that more their own?
I don't know if I understand your question correct. I would say if I understand it correct, let me know. Incorrectly, let me know. But I do get a lot. The theme I get is that people need to spend more time loving themselves, being kinder to themselves, spending more time in quiet, in meditation, whatever that means to you, in prayer.
And you pass this along to people.
Totally. Yeah, I always give people the message, and I said this may be a bunch of junk for you, but I'll email it to you. You have it. If it makes sense at some other point, wonderful. If it doesn't, it's yours. But that seems to be the biggest thing, is that people just don't feel connected to themselves. And the biggest thing we can do for ourselves is just to be kinder to ourselves and be more compassionate to ourselves and loving to ourselves. That's the theme that always comes through.
Wow, that's beautiful. So I guess, again, we're coming to the end of the show here. And, you know, again, I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank Gary for coming and sharing his gifts and his love, and Ellen for sending these beautiful tapes and the beautiful songs. And again, all your help and all your inspiration for all of you out there, that, you know, all the email you send us, all the times you call and ask about a different guest, it really inspires us. And all the new cities we're getting, and we just want to, you know, greet you and say, we're here for you. We're here to spread that love and to share the vibration of love. So good night. God bless you. We love you. Come again. Good night.